Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Man Bites Film. My name is Lewis, and this week we are going to be reviewing 3 films that involve child abuse and neglect. This is another topic that I really wanted to tackle because I feel very strongly about this topic, and I want to address these issues and possibly give a little bit of guidance, I guess you could say. These 3 films are all streaming on Netflix. I just want to put that right at the beginning. So easy access for everybody, of course. The first film that I want to go into is our feature one, and it's called A Girl Like Her. And this is a 2015 film, and this follows on this girl, Jessica Burns, that enlists the help of her best friend to basically document the abuse of her former best friend, Avery Keller. And she is basically one of the popular girls in the school, and ever since she received her popularity, she has started abusing Jessica. And she actually pretty much falls into a coma right at the beginning of the film, because she overdoses on drugs trying to avoid and get away from all this stuff. That's pretty much the beginning of the film. And it follows this documentarians actually going to the school, because the school is on the top 10 list of best schools in the United States. So the documentarian captures and goes to do the documentary right when the incident happens with Jessica, when her attempted suicide, because she's in a coma, so it's attempted suicide. So the documentarian, of course, takes this and runs with it, because it's the main point of, it makes a good film, I guess you could say. So she starts interviewing the friends and all that stuff, and all the friends, little by little, they start throwing Avery under the bus. And when the documentarian goes and approaches Avery, you actually see why Avery does the things that she does. It's very interesting because it goes into the mind of the bully for the first time in a film like this. You actually see the abuse that she endures, and the subtle abuse that she endures from her mother specifically, and the reason that she takes this violent path with Jessica, and this very harsh way that she approaches Jessica, and she doesn't realize it though, that she's abusing her, until she's faced with it right in front of her, like the proof is there. And that's when she completely breaks down, and she realizes, oh my God, I can't believe it's, this is what I'm doing. I think that takes a different approach on abuse and child abuse. The abuse that a parent gives to a child to overachieve. I think that's a very impactful abuse that people don't realize how bad it can really be. It messes people up, because you're always striving to reach goals that are not realistic. The parents set unrealistic goals for their children because they want them to be the best, and they do it sometimes for very selfish reasons, and that leads to the abuse of a child, because they take that out on other people. They grow psychologically messed up because of this, and these type of situations, I've seen it before in real life, and it's very true. The parents could really mess up a child psychologically because of their high expectations and unrealistic expectations of their child. And I think this grasps that very well with the characters. They're very real. They're very solid. It starts off very much like just a very cheesy film, but it's quickly evolves into something a lot further, and this is definitely worth a watch. I give this a 7.5 out of 10 because of that. I really liked the way that this film approached this situation. It did it in such a way that it's very cohesive. So again, it's A Girl Like Me. This is streaming on Netflix. The next film that I want to talk about is we need to talk about Kevin. It's a Lion Ramsey film, and this is a 2011 film about postpartum depression, and it leads a mother to mentally abuse her child and raises her child in a very harsh way. She hates this child because of how odd he is in certain situations, and the child reacts oddly because of the abuse and the neglect that this mother has on him, and it kind of develops him into a sociopath, and he becomes extremely violent towards his mother and towards everybody in his family at one point. And there's a climax scene at the very end that is, it completely blows the hatch over everything that had occurred throughout this hour and a half long film, and you grasp finally what postpartum depression can do to a child. There's a lot of postpartum depression movies about why the woman is depressed, this and that and the other, but they really don't go into the abuse that the mother does to the child because of the depression. And this film kind of analyzes that very well. Great acting by all the actors, even the child. He does a phenomenal job actually grasping the character of Kevin. I think it really develops into a very good film, and it should be watched by anybody. This is streaming on Netflix, so it's easy access, and it's only an hour and a half, so it's very easy to watch. So please check this one out. We Need to Talk About Kevin is the name of the movie. And the last film that I want to review today is Who Took Johnny? This is a documentary about Johnny Gosch that disappeared in 1985. This is the first major disappearance of a child. And this actually opened the door for a lot of different things that we know nowadays about missing children and all that stuff. This was the first child to be featured on a milk carton as a missing child. He was the reason that this campaign started, and it opened the door to the mass media about child pornography that up to this point had been non-existent, and nobody knew anything about it except obviously the perverts, the disgusting freaking people that actually watch this thing. And this is the first view in the mainstream about this, and the sick underworld of child pornography and child trade. I mean, like, they literally start trading these children like cards across states, across countries even. It's disgusting, but they kidnapped children in the 80s because of this, to get this, to be able to make money off of slave labor off these children, filming this stuff. And the only reason that we know, because Johnny was never found, technically, but we've seen interviews by people that were part of the ring, and they were caught and imprisoned because of whatever cases that came up against them. And there's actually one person that stands up and says, I know who Johnny Gosch is. I know where he is. And he starts telling the story of Johnny and what happened to him, and how he was actually used and abused in this ring, and how he was kidnapped even. And this was all part of a child trading ring that they had in the Midwest. And it actually gives the first glimpse of what happens in these type of situations to children and everything that the public had no idea of any of this stuff. It was like this was completely taboo, and it was looked over completely, and it was glossed over. And up to this point, if a child was missing, he couldn't be looked for by the police until after 5 days. I mean, that's ridiculous to me. It really is. I can't even believe that, and they've changed that now to 24 hours, but 5 days, the child is dead by that time. If he was alive after the first day, I mean, come on. It's really bad. And the police, they go into the mother of Johnny Gosch, and she's telling her story about the police, how they looked at her and how their like reaction, they're covering up this ring. They're part of the ring, and they're covering up the death of another child that happened 3 years later. The same exact disappearance that Johnny Gosch had, exact same thing. I mean, literally down to the point that he was doing the same job that Johnny was doing before he disappeared. I mean, it was crazy, and the cops, they looked at it. Oh no, I think your child ran away. That was their response to her, and to the other child that disappeared 3 years later, the exact same way. And even when somebody came forward and said that he is part of a prostitution ring now, they said, oh no, he ran away. Even then, it's ridiculous that the cops completely overlooked this type of thing before, and now forget it. That does not happen anymore, thank God. But I reviewed these 3 films just in basically to bring awareness of this type of situations. Last week I did bullying. This week I wanted to do child abuse, because they go hand in hand a lot. A lot of bullies are bullies because they were abused. And that's the topic that I'm going in today. And obviously the bullies abuse somebody else, so those people are victims as well. And those people end up killing other people, which it's a vicious cycle of abuse and reaction and loss of life for no reason. And I think that it's a strong topic that should be addressed more often than it is currently, and in a better way than it is currently. And these 3 films portray that very well, I think. And I think that this will capture the essence of what I want to give to everybody. They're very hard films to watch, but it's definitely something that should be watched and should be presented to your children, so they know what to watch for, what abuse is. Because a child won't know what abuse is until they see it or they have an example of it. And one thing, a child could think it's normal to see all these things, and in reality it's real abuse. So please check these 3 films out. They're easy access. All 3 are on Netflix. I'm trying to go towards that more often. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This, again, solemn episode of Man Bites Film. I guarantee you next week we're going to do a little bit more entertaining for our 1-year anniversary. So please check this out, and definitely watch us next week. We're going to be doing an extravaganza, I guess you could say. So my name is Lewis, and this is another episode of Man Bites Film. See you guys next week.